He strikes so steady, he makes the sparks to fly all round the smithy. I love to watch my love with his hammer swinging. I love to hear it fall on the anvil ringing. The note is loud and clear, the sparks are flying. My love is handsome and there's no denying. My love's at the bellows now, the fire is in. It's getting mighty hot, the flames are soaring. Nothing can be more gay when the flames are going. That night is bright as day when my love is glowing.
The uncompromising rush of commuter traffic from town to city threatens quieter countryside and old ways. But not far from the busy main road from Kidderminster to Birmingham, there is a village which still retains much of its historic character. Churchill is a village still rich in the memories of its ancient crafts. One may suppose that with its imposing dwellings and large farm buildings, Churchill's history centres around a thriving agricultural community. But here too was a community which played its own part in the early industrialisation of the Midlands. Once the small stream which winds its way through the village was the artery which gave life to 10 water mills. At one time this was the most densely populated area for mills in the country. Most of these mills were of Saxon origin, but the one surviving mill dates back to medieval times. Since the 17th century, one family in particular has been associated with the mills in Churchill, and for 200 years have lived and worked at Churchill Forge. Their names, their times and their passing are all recorded in the churchyard. The mill was worked commercially until the death of Claude Bache 2 years ago. Swan-proud and tree-girt lies the dam pool which was created in medieval times to supply water to the mill wheel. The water from the dam pool, or hammer pond, is regulated by an adjustable trap gate and piped under the road to a head tank suspended over the mill. Down in the hollow below the dam, a huddle of roofs house the mill machinery. The open shed serves to protect the stocks of steel, once wrought iron, which are the raw material. The irresistible motion of the huge cast iron water wheel with its 16 oak spokes quickly arrests the attention with its regular beat as the driving water weighs against each blade in turn. An older wheel, with its unique build of 7 spokes, once operated the great leather bellows which pumped the air to the furnace hearth. The mill cottage close by, though now a private residence, still displays the trade plate of Benjamin Bache, who worked the mill mainly to produce garden tools of very high quality. A gardener, once having had one of his spades, would never use another make. It is thought that the name of Bache is of Saxon origin, and means a valley with a small stream. In 1925, Benjamin Bache's son, Claude, started work in the mill as a lad, eventually taking over from his father to continue the tradition of his forebears. Each generation since the 13th century has made its contribution to the methods and means used in the forge. From the simple water wheel and tilt hammer, evidence of which still remains, Churchill Forge progressed to the Industrial Revolution, when man's exciting surge of invention created the machines which are still in use here today. Claude Bache knew every part of this machinery. His livelihood depended upon his constant care and daily lubrication of the massive bearings. These house the 3-foot diameter cast iron main shaft on which 2 flywheels and all the main gears and drives to the overhead shafts are taken. A maze of whirling belts is the first impression one gains on entering the forge, for the belts and countershafts stretch away in all directions to operate a multitude of machine tools, such as the hammers and the presses. The whole scene is covered with soot from the forge and dust from bygone centuries. On every side is an apparent confusion of scrap metal, old tools and junk of every description. But Mr. Bache had an astonishing memory for the hundreds of articles in his workshop and the places where he put them last. One particular belt stretches away on its own through the wall of the mill to drive the grindstones, which are housed in a lean-to shed. Here, most of the edge tools, such as scythes and sickles, were sharpened with meticulous care. The principal output of this little factory were the solid steel edged tools, which made the name of Bache a byword for quality all over the world. Billhooks, forks, rakes and sickles, to mention only a few of its products. But it is the ladle, in demand from the non-ferrous smelting industry of the Midlands since the last war, which has become the principal product of the forge. With the death of Claude Bache, the future of Churchill Forge as a working concern was threatened, but his daughter, Pauline Haywood, and her husband found a weekend enthusiast in Mr. Strand, himself once a blacksmith's apprentice.
Well, my brother-in-law, who lives in a place called Elverley, knew a young chap that was going to help Mr. Bache just before he died. He had moved over into a cottage quite near the forge, and this is how I came to hear about it. My brother-in-law told me about it, and I got interested and came over to see if there was anything I could do.
Mr. Strand found more than enough to do. He at once became determined to teach himself how to make a ladle. With scraps of information from Pauline and Geoffrey Haywood and his own early training, he perfected the sequence of operations. First cutting off a length of stock to make the ruff, which is then heated to draw out the handle and reheated to form the spade. It is then cropped, heated again and dished. The lip is then formed and finally the hook.
Well, I'd never used a pneumatic hammer to start. I had to get used to that. I also had to assess what metal would make what size ladle. The trial and error, with very little wastage, thank goodness, we arrived at the end product.